Good afternoon. Welcome to, thank you for choosing to spend the next hour with us. And we hope you find the conversation valuable. I'm Mitch Ruda. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Farm Journal. And speaking with you today will be Bob Skank, who is the President of Precision Reach, and Michael Young, who is the SVP of Precision Reach. By way of introduction, 3 months ago, Farm Journal acquired Precision Reach, which over the past 5 years has established itself as agriculture's #1 programmatic advertising service. And we did so because we could see the incredible opportunity that programmatic advertising provides for reaching farmers wherever they are. And because this team had a unique skill set and a unique platform for doing this. So hopefully today's presentation will help you see why we think programmatic advertising can turbocharge everyone's go-to-market plans and learn how to use it to best effect. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the agenda. Bob will start us off, and he's going to provide a quick backgrounder on the birth and growth of programmatic advertising over the last 10 years. And then Michael, who has hands-on experience right on top of designing literally thousands of campaigns and optimizing their performance, will share with you trends that he's seeing in how the programmatic advertising is being used and provide strategies that he thinks you should keep in mind going forward. So before I turn it over to Bob, there is a Q&A box. If you mouse over the screen with your mouse, some buttons will pop up at the bottom, and one of them says Q&A. And I encourage you to put questions as we go along in there, and there'll be time at the end to review all of those. So with that, Bob.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bob Shank. I'm president of Precision Reach. I guess by way of introduction, my background is I'm 3 decades now into ag media. So I guess you could say I'm a lifer in ag media. I absolutely love it. I grew up in the magazine business back before there was the internet. So I'm going to say it's pre-internet days. I primarily magazines. Along the way, we got into endemic digital. I've also worked with ag TV, ag radio, database marketing in agriculture. And then fast forward, in about 6-7 years ago, we discovered this new way of doing digital called programmatic advertising. So we were curious and wanted to see if this was something that might work in agriculture. So in 2016, we launched Precision Reach to be a focus in agriculture, just on programmatic. So we wanted to be a data-driven programmatic solution for agri marketers. So we started in 16, and by 2018, we've grown the business enough that, wow, this was pretty exciting. We needed to get maybe our own operations team. So we were lucky to come across Michael Young and swayed him to join us. So for the past 6 years, Precision Reach has been a data-driven programmatic solution for agri marketers, utilizing ag data. And fast forward 3 months ago, as Mitch mentioned, we partnered or became part of the Farm Journal family, and we're super excited to have their database. We got row crops, we got specialty crops, all the fruits and vegetables, as well as livestock. And we're super excited to have their behavioral data, through all the digital media properties that Farm Journal has. We'll be able to actually target based on media consumption throughout their network of digital properties. So we're pretty excited to take the data-driven programmatic to the next level. So that's my introduction. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself before I jump into this?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Michael Jung, SVP at Precision Reach. I've been in the ag industry for over a decade now, building software and media service offerings. And I, like Bob, I'm not yet a lifer, but I'm probably headed down that path. And I really enjoy the media side of the agriculture. I think it's really great. I think the people are great. So I'm excited to talk about programmatic today and how we can help our agri-marketers.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So I'm going to give just a couple slides here on and why and where programmatic started. I actually had to do a little homework myself because it's been a fast 6 years with Precision Reach, and I didn't know if I understood where all of it came from. But the question is why programmatic started, and the answer is, if you can look on the screen here, really is based on marketers needing a cost-effective, high-frequency advertising strategies to reach their target audience. And I look back and it's your Procters and Gambles and your Coca-Colas of the world that basically pushed programmatic back in the early 2010 to 14 range. So, but if you go back 15 years, in 2007, you may recall 2007 was the invention of the iPhone. In 2008, we had the Google Android come around. I think through T-Mobile had the first offering. So you can see what happened from 2008 to 2014 as programmatic took off. It kind of paralleled with mobile, the mobile explosion. You saw hundreds of thousands of mobile apps being produced. A vast majority of those, are ad supported. So mobile was really probably the big push for programmatic to get off the ground those first 5-6 years. And by 2016, there was, you can see from the chart here from eMarketer, 73% of display advertising was being done programmatically. And you can see from 2016 up to 2020, 21, how it went from 73% all the way up to 85, 86%. Display advertising was being done programmatically. From a dollar standpoint, it went from $25 billion to nearly 69 billion in 2020. And in 2021, we saw it peak at right around 80 billion total dollars. So, and that, again, this is just display. In our time frame with Precision Reach, we also saw, we went from having 200 campaigns a year in 2019. We went up to 800 campaigns in 2020, and by 2021, we reached over 1,200 campaigns a year. So we saw about 140% growth in the same time frame. So it was programmatic has been on the growth, and it's prevalent as well in agriculture. So next slide, Susan. And for 2022, the projection is you're going to see nearly 86% plus will be delivered programmatically, reaching almost 80 billion total dollars in display. This is for display. What it doesn't point out is video and audio. We project another 30 or 40 billion dollars a year being spent with those two mediums. So it's really $120 billion plus market right now in programmatic on the overall look there. So next slide, Susan. Michael, that's you.
Yep. So, Bob mentioned video and display. I think most everyone is familiar with those tactics, but the question here is, well, what's trending? What's driving, future growth? Trends that we are seeing, and a B2C programmatic provider, MIQ, is seeing is growth in both connected television and streaming audio. And we additionally see growth in data-driven social. And in agriculture, that's really Facebook specific. And as you think about how you spend your time online, we have streaming televisions, we have multiple streaming audio services, we spend a lot of time in social media. So do our producers and ag influencers. And so it's no surprise to us that this is happening, but it's certainly makes sense with us both in terms of how we've spent our time in the past couple of years during the pandemic, but also where our advertising customers are spending their dollars to reach their target audience. Next slide, please. Yeah, so Bob mentioned, a bit about who Precision Reach is. we are really a data-driven programmatic solution provider for agri-marketers. Agriculture is our focus. We identified a need for an ag-specific programmatic service provider. There's lots of B2C providers out in the marketplace, worldwide. But what we really learned over the last 6 years is the secret to meeting agri-marketers' needs is to, one, understand the nuances of agriculture, two, to have an appreciation and deep understanding of the technology that it takes to execute programmatic well, and ultimately pulling those things together with a really good service layer. If you know agriculture and you love technology, but you can't provide a good collage that hangs well together in terms of what the agri-marketer needs, it's really bumpy and frustrating for the agri-marketer. And we identified those three things, and I think that we've done a pretty good job of pulling them together. And it, the last bullet here says we've executed over 3,000 campaigns. That's 3,000 in-house executed campaigns, meaning me and my team have executed over 3,000 campaigns. And we've learned a thing or two while executing those 3,000 campaigns.
And Michael, before you move on, one of the questions that came in is, what is programmatic advertising? And it may be that there's some in the audience that could use one step back just to explain how we match advertisers to content.
Thanks, Mitch. That's one of my favorite questions. I'm going to give the Google answer, and then I'm going to give the slightly longer version, the Mike answer. So the Google answer is, it's a real-time buying of media. But I don't really like that because it doesn't really help people understand how it works. And once you understand how it works, I think people start to really get the power of it. Essentially, when your prospect is visiting a website, that website's going to sell their ad inventory real time. And they do that through exchanges. And the advertiser has an opportunity to buy that inventory as the target audience member is logging on to their favorite website, checking the weather or ESPN or whatever. And we're able, when we know who that device is attached to, which kind of producer, we're able to target our client's message to that producer as they're pulling up ESPN or AccuWeather. And that's how we are able to reach them. And it's not just those two companies that do this. This is how 80 to 90% of all digital advertising is transacted in the country at this point. So it's display, it's video, streaming audio, it happens in your television, et cetera. So it's very powerful.
If there's more
Let's go to the
questions
next.
that are left on there,
Go
just stream them in, and we'll keep answering as they come.
Yeah, so the next topic for us is really, what are the three strategies that we think are valuable for you to incorporate into your marketing plan? I'm going to turn it over to Bob for the first, and I'll handle the second two.
So thinking about the ag audience as opposed to the consumer audience, in the United States, there's what we estimate over 300 million, population. Agriculture is what, 2.5 million if you look at owner operators. So it's 1% of the audience. So when we're talking about programmatic, we want to, make sure that, a programmatic strategy for a consumer campaign is a lot different than it would be for agriculture. In this example, if you're selling a consumer product, neighbor Sally and Farmer Joe might both consume the same product, right? And so your optimizations for programmatic are going to be different, right? It's more of a shotgun approach. You're going to use, third-party data consumer overlays, we call them. And then you look at the farmer side. When we run farmer campaigns, we're using, ag data to reach your target audience. So again, 1% of the population is in agriculture, but for most of our advertisers, they're looking for a specific niche within the ag community. So a lot of times we're targeting the 1,000+ acre corn soy grower, or the 50+ fruit and vegetable growers, or the 500+ herd fed cattle producers. So So we're getting very niche within a niche. So the key takeaway here is that the data is very important. So with the Farm Journal database, we're able to, pinpoint down to your target audience. So I think that's a big difference. We often hear about campaigns that are being run that are using third-party data or consumer type data to reach an ag audience. Again, the question would be, what is your desired audience, and are you wasting any ad impressions to get to that audience? So it's a testament to having the ag data. Really, we're going after some very finite size audiences. So being data driven is really what it takes, we feel, in agriculture to reach your audience. So Michael?
Bob, if I could add one thing to that, it's not just the waste that might be happening, but it's the lack of reach if you're using an incomplete data source, right? So sure, you can waste a lot, but maybe you're going to hit a handful of the right audience. But if you start with all of the right audience, you're not going to have waste, and you're going to reach everyone you need to reach. So the next strategy that we'd recommend is really around integrated marketing, and I'll be transparent. I was not always convinced that integrated marketing worked until I did some case study research, and I'm going to share those case study findings with everyone. It really does work, and here's how I know it works. We ran a bunch of CTV campaigns to specific audience segments, and what we found is households where we served the connected television ad and then served a display ad had a 2.5 to 3 times higher click-through rate on the display ad versus the same audience segment where we did not serve a CTV ad into the household and only served them the display ad. That is incredibly powerful to me, and it makes sense, and I know it makes sense in theory, and probably prior to seeing the data, I'm a very data-driven person myself. I understood the theory, but as I saw this happen, almost every single time we ran this kind of 1-2 punch for our clients, I became convinced that integrated marketing really does work. Nothing more to say here. The next slide underscores it even to a different level. So we had a client take this advice and actually take it a step further. They ran a campaign where they ran CTV plus display retargeting. They ran audio plus display retargeting, and they had a third segment, audio plus CTV and display retargeting. Essentially, they tried 3 different tactics in comparison to 2 other tactics, and they used the same audience segments, in this case in different geos, but same creative, same size operation, same commodity operation. They were optimizing for conversion, the conversion event in their case, not CTR. The finding was when we ran all 3 tactics together, they got the most conversions, and the budget was split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And so to me, this was just another piece of evidence illustrating integrated marketing works. Reaching your target audience in different ways at different times really helps your message connect with that audience.
Michael, I'd also add that it really, I think one of the questions we get a lot is, how does CTV and digital audio, streaming audio play with farmers? And Michael, as you recall, this was a pretty extensive campaign last fall, and we were able to serve all the impressions correct to this audience. And I think it backs the farmers are on, connected TV, they're on Hula, Roku, and they're obviously on digital radio, they're on Spotify, Pandora. So we've had a lot of success delivering these campaigns. So the audience is there. So
yeah, and Bob, I think I'm going to take it a step further and say CTV, when I first joined Precision Reach, was really cutting edge, and scale wasn't quite as easy as it is now. So over the last 4 years, reaching scale at CTV has become relatively easy for us. Even those niche, audiences, specialty crops, kinds of growers. Similarly, audio was very challenging initially. Almost, I wouldn't say it was impossible when we got here, but we needed large audiences to really scale campaigns. And now we're able to scale audio much better. And that is industry-wide challenge. I've run around for a couple of years trying to curate PMPs of audio sources, inventory source in order to deliver. And that's, we've really took some huge steps forward in our ability to deliver audio to key segments.
Yeah.
And this last slide, the strategy is really to reach farmers wherever they go. And we conducted a survey and we asked farmers, hey, how do you spend your time with digital media? How much of your time is spent on ag-centric content and how much is spent on non-ag-centric content? And the results were, I'd say, in line with what our hypothesis was. And that was, they spend 2/3 of their time in non-ag-centric content and 1/3 of their time in ag-centric content. And so my big takeaway here is something that we've been championing for a while, and that is agri-marketers need to reach their audience where they are, and that means they need to reach them programmatically, and they need to reach them endemically. And you're going to reach your marketing objectives best if you use both strategies.
So
that brings us to the. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions that it came up was, can you give examples of programmatic advertising? And I started to answer it in the chat that, it's really any kind of advertising. It's really how the audience is found and the advertising is put in front of the audience. But you may talk about all the different types of units that you deliver.
Yeah, it's just obviously display advertising, your banner ads, also native content, native, we call it native display, native video. We also have pre-roll video. Very common is a 15 or 30-second pre-roll. The farmer's going into ESPN.com to check a video on his favorite, college team. That first 15 or 30 seconds would be, we would programmatically deliver that to that farmer, assuming we win the bid and it's placed in front. So 15s and 30s on pre-roll. You also have connected TV, which can be 15, 30s, and sometimes 60-second units with connected television. Digital audio, also 15 and 30. You also have a companion banner that runs with your digital audio. Michael, did I miss any of the media tactics?
I think you hit them all. When I hear that question, I think there's really two ways to answer it. One is exactly how you've done it, lay out all the different media tactics that can be served programmatically. But this individual might also be saying, how do I know how can I tell the difference between when I'm served a programmatic ad and a direct sold ad? And I would say you can't really tell the difference. They look and feel the same. And if that individual were to visit their favorite 3 websites that have advertising, they primarily were served programmatically.
So you could
in any of the units that Bob mentioned.
So you could buy an ad placement directly on ESPN, but you could also buy a programmatic placement and then reach that person when they are on ESPN.
Exactly.
In one case, you'll get whoever shows up at ESPN. In the other case, you'll get the person wherever they show up.
Right.
So one of the questions is about how do you source grower contact information, and that may it sort of ties in with cookies, and what are the ways that you find those people? What's the tech behind this?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think there's 2 points to the question. The first is, how does Farm Journal have lots of this data? And I'll save that part for Bob, but I'll cover how does the tech work. We use a identity resolution provider where we take the PII that Farm Journal has about various individuals.
PII is personally identifiable information. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. And resolves the PII to specific devices. And that's what our vendor does for us. There's a number of vendors. We partner with one that we think of as the leader in the space, LiveRamp. And the other part of the question is probably also really important, and that is, how does Farm Journal have this data? Bob, do you want to answer that?
Yep.
Do you want me to?
Yep, you bet. So Farm Journal's, I guess we call it the
Want me to take it?
Yeah, you go ahead. Yep.
I mean, Farm Journal has been collecting information about farmers for about 80 years. We regularly we do three things to build the core of the database. The first thing is we ingest from the USDA something called the FSA database, which is a database of all farmers and what crops they grow that is kept by the USDA, and that farmers are required to fill out in order to participate in all the USDA farm programs. The second thing we do is we complete about 300,000 calls a year to farmers and ranchers. Over the course of 3 years, we reach about 1 million, and then we cycle through them again to keep those records up to date and ask them about 90 questions, and maybe 90 fields of data that we collect. So what's your favorite tractor brand? What's your favorite seed brand? How often do those answers change? Is it somebody who holds a brand or somebody who changes brand frequently? What's the size of their operation? Who do they farm with? What's their role in the operation? Then we collect data from all of our interactions with farmers. So we interact with farmers about 50 million times a month. Online, we see about 14 million page views a month. And each one of those creates a data point that we can tie back to a computer. And then you can go look for a computer that read a story. And in many of those cases, we know exactly who the person is and can put it together. We can either look for the computer that read the story or look for the person that read the story. So I hope that mostly answers
Mitch,
that.
let me add an interesting element to that, and that is, because we know what kind of content that computer has been consuming, we can build out behavioral segments of our data to help our agri-marketers reach a given particular behavioral segment. And when coupled with the size of operation and commodity, that becomes incredibly powerful for our agri-marketers.
Just before we get off this subject of how we find the people, you might talk a little bit about cookies, and people know that cookies are going away, and how does that relate to this?
Yeah, we could have a whole webinar answering that question. I'll give the shortened version for folks on this webinar. Third-party cookies are going away. First-party cookies are going to persist. And Farm Journal has a first-party relationship with most of the entire database that we have, and that becomes incredibly important as the third-party cookie goes away. It will mean, my belief is the industry will solve this with some similar kind of identifying identifier. And I think that there will be multiple identifiers competing in the market. But ultimately, I bet a handful win out and there'll be some consolidation. But I believe digital marketing as an industry is going to solve the deprecation of the third-party cookie, and those with first-party data relationships with key segments are going to ultimately become even more valuable as third-party options will fade to the background.
So another question is about price. The question was worded this way: assuming programmatic advertising would be more, I'm assuming programmatic advertising would be more expensive upfront than other forms of digital or traditional advertising. Is that so?
Well, like we know with endemic digital, it's probably we're less expensive than your endemic advertising. But being data driven, programmatic, yeah, we're a little higher priced than your non-data driven programmatic vendors. So I would say we're somewhere in the middle, right, Michael?
I think that's really fair. We're probably closer to endemic, but definitely under endemic. And the reason is we're able to drive a much greater efficiency. We talked about this earlier, but we minimize your waste by hitting only your prospect segment. And we have nearly 90 to 100% reach. So you're not missing folks by using suboptimal third-party audiences is how I'll phrase that.
And ultimately, ads are being bought on these other websites that have excess inventory. So there is some competition for the price of that inventory that keeps that inventory affordable.
Mitch, I think we should point out as well, there's over 100,000 websites and mobile apps available in programmatic, exchanges on the auction. Michael's team, we've actually curated that down to a white list of about 8,000 domains. So we're bidding on a smaller group of websites and apps, and we focus on, for agriculture, we focus on sports, news, weather, and business as our core segments, knowing that's where a lot of farmers spend their time. And we don't want to go into games and puzzles and what's the other ones, Michael? Kids and crafts.
Kids, crafts, cooking.
Yeah. And we know farmers go there, but we don't want your advertising there necessarily to be in front of them during those timeframes. May not be the best use of your advertising. So
I'd say, to summarize that, it's brand safe and high quality places. And me and one other individual on my team have eyeballed all of those 8,000 websites and apps. And that took a lot of elbow grease to make happen, but also fits well within that service layer that I talked about up front, pulling it all together to make sure you get a great outcome that's low frustration and low surprises for our agri-marketers.
You provided the perfect pivot in that last sentence to where I wanted to take you next on response and conversion. And there's three different questions here that all are related. One question is, what is a conversion? Another question is, how does programmatic engagement and response rates compare? Mm-hmm. And I think there was another one in here. What is typical CTRs? So can you talk a little bit about how you measure response and?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's answer the conversion question. Conversion can be whatever the marketer defines as conversion. Classic conversions that we see are form fills. They could be dealer lookups. They could be clicking through to a product page or landing page, and you can have not just one, but you can have multiple conversion points. It's really anything that can be measured in online activity could be defined as a conversion point. And Bob, do you want to talk about sort of benchmarks and our typical metrics, or how do you want to approach that one?
Yeah, we look at benchmarks based on by media tactic. So in display banners, for example, we typically see 0.17 to 0.22% range for a CTR or click-through rate. I think we see 0.25, right, Michael, on native. We see 0.25 to 0.3 on video. Now you don't get clicks on digital audio or connected TV. Those are usually TVs on a smart device. So we're looking at the banner ads that go with those units. They're typically going to be in the 0.15 to 0.2 range. Social media, Michael, we haven't talked about what we do with Facebook boosting, but with Facebook, we're seeing 0.85 to 1% click-through rates as defined by Facebook. Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about the Facebook boosting?
Yeah. So when we execute a data-driven social, we promote your post or your sponsored ad to our audience, to the audience segment that you want us to promote it to. And that becomes incredibly powerful, that you don't have to wait for your prospect to come visit your Facebook page or hope that the Facebook algorithm decides to serve your post to that individual. We proactively push it to that audience segment. And as Bob indicated, we get a really strong response. And I would add this to the typical metrics. Because you're targeting such a specific ag prospect audience, every impression is valuable, whether they click or not. And so when I think about how to judge programmatic, I always want to say, what's your effective click rate for the target audience that you're trying to reach? If you get clicks from not your target audience, if you're selling corn seed and a non-corn farmer clicks on your ad, who cares about that click? You're not going to drive a business outcome. So if you're only reaching corn farmers, every viewable impression was valuable, and every click was a prospect, a good prospect, clicking on your ad. So there's important things to think about when you throw around benchmarks.
Do you have any thoughts about how you can measure success for connected TV or programmatic audio?
For me, it's one of the areas that's when people order a CTV campaign from us, I want to pound the table and say, you need to run display as well. And the reason is you get such a better lift out of your display campaign, and it really is the payoff for your CTV. Now, the person knows your message if they see it on that big screen in their living room. But to get them to act on it, I think is really critical to driving the business outcome. Video completion rate's the classic answer to how you measure CTV. If you run huge campaigns, huge for agriculture campaigns, providers will let you do a brand lift study, but we don't see a lot of ag advertisers running large enough campaigns where that's really applicable. Audio kind of sits in the same boat. Audio completion rate is usually quite high, 90+%. So folks are hearing it. Both of these tactics offer a click option, but relatively small click rates. As you can imagine, when you're watching the football game, you're not taking your remote and clicking on the ad. As you're listening to your podcast, you're not usually clicking off the podcast to click through to the banner ad that being played. So that's why using those two tactics and measuring with direct response activities is really valuable.
It kind of goes back to what you were. Well, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I missed, Bob?
No, that's good. Yeah.
I was going to say it sort of goes back to what you were talking about an integrated campaign. I think most of the people on this call today are marketeers and understand that both reach and frequency matter. And this is a way to make sure that you have your reach and frequency. That frequency will drive clicks, but not every impression is going to get the click. And so the extra impressions on the CCTV experience will then, once you have and to click, you'll say, "Oh, I heard about that. I want to learn more about that."
That's
So
exactly
it is additive. Yep.
And another note, Mitch, with programmatic, the beauty is we can rotate creative in. So we recommend for display or audio or video, give us multiple sets of creative, and we can run them in rotation and then optimize for the better performing units. So that's one of the beautiful things we can do, right, Michael? Through the ops team, we can set up 2-3 sets of creative and optimize accordingly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, one of the things that I often advise our clients on is think about programmatic as a great testing opportunity to try out 3 different messages. Run it for a month, look at the results, optimize your programmatic campaigns around the messages that are working, optimize the rest of your marketing efforts around those messages as well. Run your print campaign after you've seen how your 3 leading messages run in programmatic. Why would you not take that opportunity to make sure you've got a winning message when you're going to invest in a print campaign? I even advise my marketers to go back to their sales teams and tell them which messages worked, because when you're doing the hand-to-hand combat, selling your product, your sales team, tell them what message is resonating. Let them lead with that message when they're meeting face-to-face with your prospects. So digital is great for that, and programmatic makes it even better because you can quickly rotate in, control for all the other variables, and get a really good answer about what messages are working. Or, sometimes you get one that's winning, sometimes you get one that's clearly the laggard, and it's a little more elbow grease for the marketer, but the benefit that they can bring to the rest of the organization and the rest of their marketing is tremendous.
want to take you back to data for a minute. We talked a lot about how data helps you find the right people, and part of the nice marriage between Precision Reach and Farm Journal is we sit on a lot of data, and Precision Reach knows how to use that data to launch across the web. But we didn't talk about how companies could use some of their own data, and maybe you should talk about that too, because it's not just our data that could power this.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of customer, if you have your own CRM, your customer database, or you may have a dealer database, right? Retailer database. We can onboard that for your campaigns on our LiveRamp account and use those along with the Farm Journal audience if you want, or target separately. So, Michael, we've probably done, I don't know, 20% of our campaigns using the client's audience files.
Yeah, and I'd add to it, Bob. There's two ways to use the file. One, you can use it as a suppression, so that you're only reaching new folks, new prospects, or you could target specifically to your existing customers, potentially with a different message than you message with your prospects. So there's two ways to use, I'll say, client-provided data sets, and the marketers should think about that as an opportunity. Because the message you send to a prospect and potentially the offer you send to a prospect is different than what you want to send to your customers, or how you want to spend your marketing dollars.
Of course, all that data could be mixed together. So we could take a list of corn growers in Iowa. We could take a company's list of their customers. We could then segment the customers list by the size of the operations that we know that they may not know, and then start to decide who gets what message.
Yeah, Mitch, for clarity, we don't shuffle the data together, but we intersect it in different ways, keeping it structurally separate, but getting the logical result that we want.
Yes, there's a privacy issue here that's super important. Right. And we do keep, you might talk about how privacy, a question has come up about, is privacy going to jeopardize this in the future? And you might talk about how important it is to keep customer data completely segregated and actually blind to us. Yeah,
so when we push our data to that vendor LiveRamp, one of the reasons they're leading in the space is because they lead with security. And in fact, sometimes frustratingly so from a support standpoint, their employees can't see the data. It's, what do they call it? Salted and hashed is the technical term. And then the actual data that gets uploaded gets blown away. So no one actually can ever access that data once we've pushed it, which is great, right? It's super important. It's mission critical. We wouldn't want to do business any other way. And that's my leading criteria when I think about onboarding providers.
A technical question is most of the programmatic media purchased in the open exchange, or are there direct integrations with SSPs?
The answer is both. I'm not certain about how it is what the breakdown is, but there's lots of inventory in both open exchanges and what are called private marketplace deals, or you can also get private guaranteed deals that are transacted within the programmatic tech infrastructure. And I'm probably going way down the rabbit hole in terms of technology, but the answer from our standpoint is, I want to reach every farmer that's in the prospect segment. And to be honest, I don't care if that's open inventory or privately sourced inventory. And what we've ended up doing, especially in the audio space, is curating a bunch of private marketplace deals so that we can scale, so that I can reach a super majority of the target segment when a client's trying to run an audio campaign. The other media tactics that Bob laid out, for the most part, we scale really efficiently without a lot of private marketplace deals.
Back to the CTV, would you recommend adding barcodes to CTV ads? Or
the QR code.
QR
I saw that on the Super Bowl. I think it was Coinbase had a commercial, and I didn't geek out and get my phone out, but I was certainly tempted to do it. And I heard that they had great success in driving people to their website doing that. I haven't seen a lot of ads on CTV where that is an element of the creative. I'm a big proponent of test it. That's what marketing is to me. It's run a test and measure your results and tweak and run again. So if you're so inclined to want to try that, try it. I'd love to run that campaign because I'm curious what would happen. I don't think we ever have had a CTV campaign where someone has used that before.
No.
That'd be cool.
Maybe want to make it a 30-second, right, Michael? Make sure it's got enough time to
Give them plenty of time to scan it. Sure.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I would still run my display campaign with that same barcode or QR code.
Yeah. Good question.
So I wonder if you can just talk about the ways that you can buy programmatic advertising and what's the biggest difference in the buying process and how you buy it, and you might talk about how your platform integrates different avenues of how you can deliver ads.
You want to start, Bob?
No, I'll let you handle that one.
All right. So yeah, there's different programmatic service providers, right? And if in agriculture, as we've talked about, I would start with one that has the right kind of data. I would talk about ag specific. There are certainly nuances in agriculture that are critical, right? So I'd pick a provider that's ag centric, and ultimately someone who's done a lot of these campaigns because they know how to deliver, a seamless, pull it off easy for the advertiser. There's lots of providers out there, and prior to my arrival at Precision Reach used a managed service to execute the campaign. And the frank reason why I was brought in is because no one cares more about the campaign than Precision Reach will, right? Because our team is hands-on keyboard, and so when your campaigns run through us, you get to talk to the people who are literally pulling the levers. We don't use a managed service to do that for us. It's a huge service differentiator, and our ability to turn on a dime when you call up and say, pause my campaign or swap out this creative, or, hey, my campaign's been running for a week, I want to see the metrics. We can get all those things turned around quickly for you.
So shout out to Lynn Henderson. Nice to see you on here. And Lynn asks, do we have concerns that many producers don't have access to high speed, and how does this affect what you deliver?
I think that historically that was probably a pretty valid concern. I think when you do the research about how much broadband has penetrated rural America, what you'll find is the studies are anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 of rural households have high-speed internet. That's probably dated. That's probably 18 months ago, the last time I pulled those numbers. Ultimately, we got asked that question a lot, especially when I first started at Precision Reach. Every 6 months, a new study would come out showing that chart going higher and higher. And we, for the most part, stopped hearing that question. And ultimately, the answer became really easy. Yeah, it's not the same as the urban centers in the United States, but it's 10% behind the urban centers. And so, 8 out of 10 is probably 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 is probably the right answer for how many producers have high-speed internet at their house. And probably even more who don't have high-speed internet have a smartphone where they can access that content.
Yeah, Michael, I was just going to point that out. We typically see 40 to 50% of our impressions delivered through mobile. So that's the smartphone users. So that kind of takes out of play the high speed, right? They're on 4G, 5G. So yeah.
Not everyone.
I don't want to say everyone. I know it's not everyone, but it's a super majority for sure.
Right.
Okay, guys, I don't know if there's more questions here. I think we've answered most of the questions. Assuming no more come in, I'd ask you guys, is there one key takeaway you want to make sure that everybody gets in their head before we close?
Well, I would say,
I think you go ahead, Bob.
I was gonna say
You got it.
programmatic, I'd say programmatic is here to stay, and it's still growing, and being data driven, right? Especially in agriculture, it's important that we reach that target audience, whether we're using our first party data or we're using the client's data or a combination of both. So, you know, it's evolving, it's changing, and we're gonna, as Precision Reach goes, we're gonna keep improving and getting better, right, Michael? As we keep learning ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right.
The data drives the efficiency of the buy, and that becomes really important.
Is there a standard CPM or does it vary by target?
It varies by target, size of operation, and whether you're a producer or influencer group. Bob would love to talk to you about pricing, whoever's asking that question.
We're ready.
But
Yeah.
yeah, we got a standard, pricing sheet that anyone can look at and see the various segments that we offer.
Yeah, and Mitch, it depends on the media tactic, right? Banners are lower than a video or audio CPM, so. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you to everyone who attended. Before we close, I want to remind everyone to join us for our next Farm Country update, which is on the 30th. I didn't write that down. Somebody help me. Susan, can you unmute? And make sure I'm right on the 30th. There it is, March 30th. It's sitting there on the screen in front of me. And I believe it'll be at the same time, 3 o'clock Central Time. And Tyne Morgan, the host of the U.S. Farm Report, will moderate a panel on farmer expectations for 2022 planting. So it will be very timely information right at that moment. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody, for attending. I hope you found the hour valuable.